Direct from Fort Meade, Maryland, this is DINFOS Live.
All right, folks, well, it's official. This is episode 2. We've now got ourselves a series, somebody called Netflix. The title says it's DINFOS production, and it is that, but we are inside Studio 1 of the Defense Media Activity here at Fort Meade, Maryland, and this is where we film each month. The MTT puts this together. That's our mobile training team out of DINFOS. Mel Weatherspoon is a brainiac behind this, and we're going to try to bring you new subjects every month. All right, let's talk a little bit about the show itself. DINFOS Live is basically beyond the classroom. It takes a subject that maybe you came to a course, or you're thinking about coming to a course, and then you go back to your unit and something, you just have something that wasn't covered, or something that's, that you want to figure out. This is where you can address that. You can get online. We do have some questions already. You can ask those questions to the subject matter experts, and each month we'll tackle a new subject. So today we're going to be talking communication planning, and I have with me Major Judy Marlowe. Ma'am, thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's go ahead and just address the obvious. Last month we matched, not us, but the guest, last month we matched purple shirts. That was unintentional. Today we are matching in denim jeans, and that is absolutely intentional, and here's why. Today we're wearing the denim jeans to support survivors, to raise awareness about all forms of sexual violence. Because remember, what hurts one affects us all. Thank you. Okay, ma'am, let's get settled in here.
Right.
First off, before we dive in, if you would, just tell me a little bit about you and what you do at DINFOS.
Yes, so my name is Major Judy Marlowe, and I teach at PAX-Q at the Defense Information School across the street. I have been an instructor there since August, and prior to that, I attended Georgetown University, where I received my degree in Public Relations and Corporate Communications, and that is actually where my love started for comm planning.
Love for comm planning. What a
unpopular opinion, I know, but it's true.
Interesting relationship. That's great. So, and you brought someone with you to help out with the social media. They're going to be answering questions. Who is that?
Yes, Lieutenant Jack Georges is in the audience, and he is also an instructor at PAX-Q and one of the subject matter experts of comm planning. We attended Georgetown University together.
Both Georgetown grads.
Yes.
That's perfect.
No big deal.
Yeah, we're definitely qualified to answer the questions. That's perfect. Okay, and then with us also in studio, Petty Officer Purefoy, going to be taking your questions live. So if you can't call in, we don't have that technology, but you can definitely get online and send your questions. So what do you say we dive into this?
Let's do it.
Communication planning, right? You can shorten it up to comm planning, still a little bit intimidating to some people. Talk to me a little bit about the scale. Does the planning change whether it's a large scale exercise in Norway or on the border of Russia or something, or if it's just a local base or station type event? Does the process change?
So I will say the process doesn't change, but maybe the amount of time that you spend in the process changes. Okay. So, and before I even go further, I want to say I understand that communication planning is this beast, and it can be a little bit intimidating. I have some students right now who are in the thick of it in planning, and some things are just really difficult to get. So to simplify, we always say you want to start with your research. Your research is going to feed exactly how much time you're going to put into this plan. If it's something that is an event, which we don't always say jump straight to a tactic, jump straight to an event, because the event is usually solving a problem. So we want to get to the root of that before we even jump to the tactic. And so the research will drive exactly how long the process will be, and that's why we say it's important we use the format of RPI, right? Research, planning, implementation, and evaluation, and that will always be the same. You should be using that all the time, even if you're not writing a formal communication plan.
Got it. It's funny that you say pie right after lunch, and now I'm hungry.
I'm always hungry, so welcome to my world. That's how it is.
So why is it important? Like, why do we need to go through this process? Why should that be in place?
Yeah, this is where we as communicators make our money, right? Commanders, they need us communicators to go out there and to be able to accomplish their intent, accomplish the organizational goal through communication. And this is something we do every single day. We're always sending a message. We're always doing research, even in our personal lives. If you're going to a movie, you're researching. Before you go to a restaurant, before, I'm sure when you met your spouse, you did a little research, not in a stalker way, but in a way to get to know her so that you can communicate with her, so you're able to form that relationship. And it's the same thing. So I always tell people, don't be intimidated by the process. It's there to help us. It's there so that we can be an asset to our command. That's what we want to make sure that we talk about, getting a seat at the table. This is how you get a seat at the table, when you can speak intelligently on the topic, on the issue that really matters to your command and the mission.
Good points. No, that's perfect. So after you've done the research, how do you select the tactics? You mentioned tactics a while ago, and talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so before I do, right, I always have to say that, before I talk about
That's
that.
okay.
Jumping.
This is your show.
Oh, great. Before we jump into tactics, because as communicators, we love to go straight to the fun stuff, right? We want to say, oh, I want to do that cool video, or I want that thing, or even the commander or executive officer, they'll say, I want this video. But it's our step, first of all, to pull back and to say, okay, sir, ma'am, what are you actually trying to achieve with this video?
Why?
Because if you are trying to achieve this, then maybe we can go about it a different way. So before you even jump to the tactic, you have to understand who you're speaking to and understand how they consume that information. That's extremely important. If I'm speaking to someone who is a spouse of a service member, it's going to be absolutely different than I'm speaking to my grandmother.
Sure.
So we have to understand who we're speaking to, how they consume that information, what's important to them. So when we send them that message, we know how they're going to receive it.
Okay. Perfect. Well, the good news is people are watching because we're getting questions in. So let's turn it over to Petty Officer Purefoy. We'll take a couple of questions from her, and then we'll go back and I'll dive deeper here.
Okay.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes.
You're talking about comm planning. You said a lot. I know you talked about grandmothers and my grandma is pretty savvy with comm planning.
Is she? We would be BFFs, let me tell you. Okay.
Just kidding. But we do have a question already in the live comments, and it's about technology.
Okay.
The question is from Mr. Einstein or Mrs. Einstein, I'm not sure who, but it says, any ideas on technology to use to allow the community to talk to each other? Something public like a message board. It would be ideal if the information could be organized into topics.
I'm a little confused by
I
that.
think
Is
it's in
that
reference to comm
between
planning.
communicators?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe because, and this is my assumption,
yeah,
and
please.
if the Einstein can jump back on,
Yeah.
maybe because comm planning is complex, and maybe if people are working on similar projects, they can come together and communicate about how to get the planning done and more efficiently.
Okay, I mean, there are plenty of platforms. One doesn't come to mind. I know DINFOS Pavilion, that's definitely a great platform where you can use different templates to bounce off ideas. I believe you could communicate with people through there as well. But again, it always, and I know you're probably all going to get sick of hearing this, but it starts with research. That is where it is. That's where you find out exactly what you're going to do, right? Before you even start doing the thing and trying to come up with a solution or how we're going to tackle this, you have to let the research just really shape how you're going to communicate.
Absolutely.
So I hope that answers the question, but if not,
I
I'm
hope
sure
so, too.
he or she would jump back on.
And we'll
Okay.
talk more about Pavilion
Okay.
later. There's another question.
All right.
What has been the most effective format to present a comm plan to your commanders or senior leaders? And this came from Nadine Veronica.
So that is very dependent on your commander. I've had commanders where they wanted a full-blown presentation and they blocked out an hour because it was so important. And then I have one that just, hey, I just want you to send this in a PDF, in a Word document. So it all depends on how your commander wants that information. So don't be afraid to ask, hey, sir, ma'am, this is what I want to do. What is the best way to present this? When can I get on your calendar so we can discuss this? And then you'll learn by sitting in meetings. I encourage my students all the time, go to those meetings, learn your commander, learn the staff, learn how to communicate with them so you can really tie in with the planning that the staff is doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. One team, one fight.
Exactly.
You know, makes stuff cohesive.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
So you talked a little bit about the commander and how they want it to be presented, but is there a certain length that a comm plan should be? Like, is there a minimum or a maximum, or is it just how does that work?
So if you Google communication planning, you're going to see a variety. I've seen communication plans 2 pages, and then I've written one that was 40 plus pages. Right now in the schoolhouse, we recommend 8 to 12 pages. I think that's a good length, especially for the time frame that we're expecting it. Okay. So again, it just depends on the situation. If this is a really big issue, let's say there's noise complaints from vehicles or aircraft, then, and that's an ongoing thing, this might be a lengthier communication plan, and it might be something that you're revisiting, because it's not just a standalone document where you just put it on a shelf. Okay, we used that, that was cute, let's see what works now. No, you want to take it out and you want to evaluate the last process of RPI, and you're constantly going back and seeing what works and what doesn't work, because if something doesn't work, you don't want to repeat that again. You want to make sure that I have my evaluation measures in place and that worked, so let's repeat that. If that didn't, let's scratch that. So you're constantly updating it in order to meet the needs of the command.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm a big fan of making my own individual mistakes. So, so let's talk a little bit about the social media aspect of it. Is that something you integrate into the plan? Is it standard for all of them, or how do you do that with social media?
So when you're writing a communication plan, and there are a lot of components, and I'm sure Lieutenant George has put the link for DINFOS Pavilion so you can see the format if you're not familiar with it, but social media is a strategy that you use in order to accomplish your objective. And again, that's the last step. We don't want you to jump straight to social media. A lot of times, us as communicators, we look at numbers and the vanity metrics. So we can have a video that has 1 million views, but do we take into account that maybe 50% of those are bots, and maybe a quarter of those aren't even the people that we're trying to reach? They're not moving the needle. They're not accomplishing our commander's intent and our goal of what we're trying to do. So that's really important when you're thinking about your social media strategy. I have a student who her commander said, we need an Instagram page. And when I asked her the question, well, why? Who are you trying to communicate to? I don't know. And she would answer me, I don't know. And there's this very specific audience. If you're using Instagram, that is very tailored to maybe a younger demographic, someone who cares about just visual aids. So again, the research, right? That's going to be the word that you're going to be like, research, I got it. Yeah. But it's so important to always start there. And research is not just a Google search. Oh, let me just see what Google says. It's talking to people. It's talking to those subject matter experts. It's going out there. It's reading. It's environmental scanning, something that you should do every day to see what the information environment is surrounding the mission, surrounding your organization.
All good points. Do you have more questions?
We do.
Yeah,
we
perfect.
actually do. Other than a question, we also have a shout out.
Oh.
To you. Oh. Not somebody said, Ms. Robinson, well, she's very knowledgeable. She's so right. So just so you know, you're doing a great job.
We can be BFFs too. Thank you.
You're doing a great job. So Ms. Marie, she asked, she said, working in the law enforcement environment, we are very reactive. What are some tips in persuading the importance of comm plans to those who don't see the importance?
I think flipping on the news every day, right? Us services, we kind of joke a little bit. We take turns being in the news for things that we don't want to be in the news for. And when you see that, and it's not oh, look at them, that wasn't us, because guess what? Tomorrow, it could be you. And I think explaining that, because you see tragic situations in the news and how it could have been avoided if the communicators, not just the communicators, but if we just stopped and take the time to really plan. That's why I recommend when people get to their unit, even if you're already at your unit and you haven't been doing this, start Monday, start tomorrow, where you're saying, you know what, let's pull in, let's see what's really important. What is the commander's intent? What is the mission? What is our communication goal? Because you need to go through that process. And I understand it could be lengthy and you won't have that buy-in. But if you really communicate your value and you show, this is what I can do, right? And how do I know that? Because here is my research laid out. People will not argue with your research. They might argue with your feeling or what you think, but when you have the data and you present it and you're able to show them, hey, we do not want to be on the news tomorrow, and I foresee this issue happening, so let's address this now in this communication plan. Maybe we'll never have to use it, and that'll be great, but if we do have to use it, we have a plan, and we'll be more successful than maybe our sister service.
Absolutely. What do you think that balance? Sorry to jump in. I'm really curious about The balance between your proactive and your reactive, you know, what would you say? Is it a 50-50 balance on average, or is it more of one or the other?
Yeah, there's certain things that you can't ever anticipate happening, right? We'll pick up the newspaper. Right. Well, who picks up the newspaper? Let's be real. We'll pick up our phone and we scan social media and we say, I pick up a newspaper, and we scan social media and we say, man, I never knew that was going to happen. I would have never guessed in a million years. But then there's some issues that keep occurring and we keep falling in the same pitfalls, which is why I understand that we don't always have all the time in the world. However, if you're seeing that there's a common theme, if there are accidents, if there are a lot of things that are happening in your organization and it continues to be a problem, then you need to pull away and say, you know what, we need to have a plan for this because we keep hitting the same pitfalls. We keep running into the same issues. So in order to set your command for success, look at what went right, what went wrong, and then put, words are hard, and what went wrong, and implement that in your plan and show that. It's really boggling to me, mind-boggling, how people say, we don't have the time. And it's that, well, if you don't have the time now, you're going to have to make the time when it becomes an issue.
Right. And no worse time to try to get familiar with the planning process than when you're reactive.
Yeah.
So why not get your feet wet and come up with a plan and be proactive, something that's easy, that you can set on a shelf and maybe never have to use it.
And I want to say, not just to be on the negative, we're talking a lot about issues and problems, but you would also write a communication plan for an opportunity. Maybe there's someone, key public, that you haven't reached, you haven't communicated with, but you see an opportunity there. You can write a communication plan for that as well. It doesn't always have to be the doom, gloom, crisis. It could be, hey, this is a great time for us to reach out to these people in order to accomplish our goals. Like, let's jump on this opportunity.
Good point.
Absolutely.
Back to you. I'll let you take back over. I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
I'm a nerd too with this stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Wait, did I say I was a nerd? I am, but I didn't say. Okay, I said it. Okay, it's fair.
This is very invigorating. We have actually, speaking of questions on top of questions, a really long question, multi-part question. So I'll just ask half for now and half for later.
Okay.
From Miss Emily Rogers. So it starts with, I'm at an installation wing level PA shop. How do you decide what issues out of the many deserve a full out comm plan?
First, finding out what's important to your commander. Finding out his or her priorities. Once you find out his or her priorities, you can see what's happening that is compromising those his or her priorities. And you can do that a variety of ways. I recommend students go on Facebook pages and for the local community and do some social listening. See what's going on out there. Go talk to people. I know that's a little difficult with COVID, but there's so much technology that you can go out and find out, okay, these are the commander's priorities. Let me see what is happening. What are people talking about? What is stopping us from meeting that mission? And then once you identify that, then put all your effort into that. If you only have 2 people in a shop, I worked in a shop for 2, and we were supporting 5,000 soldiers who were spread across all of Europe on any given day. And you have to prioritize. And I think the way you do that and you explain it to your commander is saying, hey, sir, ma'am, this meets your priorities. And I can't, unfortunately, answer all of the issues, but based on my analysis and my research, this is showing that this is the one that could be the showstopper for our unit.
Absolutely. Like you said earlier, you can't fight research, right?
Yeah.
And what the kids say now is hashtag facts. That's facts.
Hashtag facts. I like it.
Okay, another part of her question says, if or when you have multiple comm plans to implement, from HHQ or local, how can you practically keep track of implementation and evaluation? Any good tools?
Oh, that's a big question, right? Which I don't know if we could have a one-on-one. I don't know if the student is in the schoolhouse, but I would love to have that conversation.
Right.
But the tools for evaluation is implementation. What I would say with the communication plan, this is why you want to make sure that you have a calendar that lays out the dates. And you can see the time, who's involved, and what needs to be done. And then you also want to put your evaluation tool in there. And you want to do this before you even start the process so that there's no surprises, right? That's why you do this planning, so that you can know, hey, I need to be at this place at this date, and these people need to be there, and this is what is expected. And then by doing that, you're able to kind of adjust to the plan. And I don't know if that really answers the question. I apologize if I don't answer the question, but I could definitely follow up after the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully, Ms. Rogers will stay around, stay in the chat and get the information to reach out.
Yes, Ms. Rogers would love to talk with you.
Thank you.
So you talked about being in a small shop and you know, working for a very large base or whatever. What if you're a small shop, and how do you evaluate a plan without a lot of those resources? You know, if you're not a huge shop, how do you do that?
You need to identify that in the research and the planning and make it realistic. Sometimes I know students, they have these huge goals like, oh, I want to have 90% of increase in positive public perception, or something that's unrealistic, but they just put it kind of just to check the block. So make sure that you can actually evaluate. A lot of, especially with social media, a lot of the tools are already built in for you for analytics. And you just need to make sure when you're writing your objectives, you understand how you're going to measure that. So if you're saying it's a 50% increase, understand your baseline and work at the level that you are. Look around the shop, look around the base. Maybe there are other people, other assets that you can use that you're not even aware of. And that can be an asset. Sometimes even picking up the phone, calling higher headquarters. I've done that as a brigade public affairs officer, and they sent me help when I asked. Sometimes we think we're by ourselves and we're really not. And you have subject matter experts to your right and left, but you don't know if you don't have that conversation. So as PAOs and CSOs, we need to go out there, talk with people, talk with the community. It's not just a communication thing. Communication affects everyone on the staff, right? Everyone in the organization, they're communicating. And they're subject matter experts. So use that in order to bring them into your evaluation and into your plan.
Sounds good. There are so many similarities. Our first subject was social media with Quante Hall. And there's so many parallels to what you're talking about and what he talked about. If you're just joining us, we're talking communication planning with Major Judy Marlowe. She's been in the studio here with us today. So let's go back to social media. I think you probably have a few more questions.
Yeah, we have some questions.
We'll turn it back over
here.
there.
All right.
People are very excited about comp planning. We thought that comp planning was a major pain, but people are really
so
into
there are other
it.
nerds like me.
They're
Got it.
into
I'm
it.
all here. I'm
It's
here
a
for
thing.
it.
It's a
Nerd
thing.
Network.
The Nerd Network. Let's not offend our audience, then they might shy away. Okay.
We're embracing it.
You all are great. Another question we have is from J.A. Marlowe, and it goes, what are a few proven ways to effectively identify key publics?
All right, so key publics, that's funny. That's my husband. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I did. So thank you, honey, for that. First, what I tell my students is you want to do your stakeholder analysis. And this is basically who can affect your organization and who can be affected by your organization. And you're going to list them out. So your stakeholders won't change, but what will change is your engagement with them according to the issue or the opportunity at hand. So once you have that list, then you look at the issue and say, who does this affect? Who do we need to reach in order to accomplish that communication goal? And then based on that, we tell our students for the communication plan in the schoolhouse to identify 3 key publics, because that's not a large number that's kind of overwhelming. It's like, hey, I could talk to 3. You might have a list of 20 stakeholders, but you're not going to reach all of them, and you shouldn't, because some of the issues won't affect them directly at this time. So taking that stakeholder analysis and pulling out your key publics and understanding how you want to engage with them. I hope that answers the question, honey.
That does. Oh, I'm sorry. Honey, there's a question that came in prior to the show. Actually, our show creator brought it to us from a meeting she was at earlier, so we really care about everybody, right? Yeah. The question says, I just received orders overseas to support a mission. What comm planning should I be doing myself ahead of time to prepare myself for the information environment there?
You should definitely be doing your environmental scanning. So research everything you can. You can use data miner, Google Alerts, get all that information, find out what's happening so it can really shape the environment and you're able to understand what's happening. And then I would say another form of research is reaching out to whoever you're replacing or who is there on ground and can give you kind of that, hey, this is what's really happening. Maybe something that you won't find out in the newspaper or you won't find out any other way. Make sure, because those are people who are there are great resources. So I would say use them and ask, hey, what is happening over there? What are the problems that you saw that maybe I can start planning on now? And once they identify, hey, these are kind of the problems that we see, take that and start doing your research, start doing your planning, using that, the DINFOS Pavilion comp plan template. I highly recommend start filling that out now. So when you get on ground, you're already way ahead of the game. So now maybe you could even start implementing and evaluating to see what works and what's not working.
We're communicators, so we should communicate.
We should communicate, you know, and that's something that we say that all the time, but then sometimes we're the worst at it, if we're being honest, right? And I would say I'm guilty for that. But we don't communicate well even to each other. And sometimes we have to stop. Jack and I were talking about, Lieutenant Georges and I were talking about this earlier, or we want to jump straight to tactics. And we have to stop ourselves and say, no, let's do it the right way. So we don't have to revisit this problem again.
I think sometimes also we think about tactics before we think about the planning.
All the time.
And how do you get out of that mindset? Going from tactics and really getting to what you say over and over again, the research.
You have to ask yourself why. Oh, I want to do, so my students come up to me, man, I want to do this social media thing. I want to do this town hall. Okay, why? And they're like, well, because I want to talk to people, or because someone told me to do it. Why? What is that message that you're trying to get across? Who are you trying to reach? If you're trying to reach my grandmother, she's not on Instagram. So why are you using that platform? So I think it's just stopping ourselves. And I tell my students, keep asking yourself why until you get to that heart. Man, I want to increase knowledge. I want to change the attitude. I want to modify behavior. Those are what we do as communicators. It's the knowledge, attitude, behavior. So we have to remember to separate that. We can take the organizational goal. That's what shapes it. But we have to remember as communicators what our lane is, and that's difficult, especially for my my Army officers. They sometimes, because they have the operational background and they're so great at what they do, they want to jump straight to the tactics or think organizational goals. And it's like, no, use that, and that's a great tool that you have, but you have to shift and make sure it's knowledge, attitude, and behavior.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much.
So we've said it a lot, and it's good. We need to drive that home, the research part. But is there any part of the process that's more complicated than the others, or that should be taken besides the research part? Is there any other area that needs more emphasis?
Definitely research. I think research and the planning, right? Because that's the bulk of your plan. You're writing you're conducting your research, and that's feeding into exactly how you're going to develop your messages and who you're talking to. Because if we boil down to the communicator's mission, it's who are we talking to and what are we saying? So you have to know those things, and you have to understand the channels that you're using to send that message out. So it all depends, but I always say if you do your research and your planning well, everything else should really fall in line. But if you try to rush through that research and you're just perceiving, hey, I think this is a problem based on what so-and-so said or based on my own opinion, you're setting yourself up for failure. And also you're spending all this time trying to solve a problem that might not even be there.
Yeah, good points. Good stuff. Do we have more online?
We do.
I figured we did, so let's answer the audience's questions.
Yeah, the chat is, it's a buzz.
Oh.
So we have a question from Orion Debouy. I hope I'm saying that right.
Dubois.
It's Booy.
Oh.
It's like Booy.
No.
I'm not going We apologize.
What are your thoughts on communication campaigns like the COVID-19 Community Core that specifically seeks trusted messengers to target key audiences?
So kind of influencers?
I would think so. I think they put trusted messengers in quotations.
I think that it's really wise if you find people in your community who have influence and power and they're going to drive your message home, definitely use them. But again, that all goes back to the research, understanding who their audience is. Because just because someone has a large following doesn't mean that they're going to resonate with the key public that you're trying to reach. Absolutely. So it's extremely important to remember that when you're reaching or using influencers. Do I think it's wise? Absolutely. I mean, use what you have. And if there's someone out there who can amplify your message, use that.
Cool. And then he doubled up. There's a double dip here. What strategies /tips work best when briefing a comp plan in order to get that buy-in you're seeking from your commander, especially when authenticity is key and there's a risk in not being able to control the message?
So you asked if, can you repeat that first part again? I think I had it. I apologize.
Strategies and tips.
Strategies.
What strategies and tips work best when briefing comp plans? So I think you answered this somewhat earlier.
Well,
in order to get the buy-in.
Yeah, so the commander, it's all about understanding how he or she works and what's important to them. So you don't want to overwhelm them with a 40-page comp plan. Don't ever do that. That's for your internal, that's your internal document for your shop to say, okay, these are our marching orders, this is our framework. But you just want to hit bottom line up front. What do they need to know as the commander, and what do they need to know about the risk? If you're presenting a plan that involves some risk, they want to know what's the risk versus reward? What's going to happen, and how are you protecting me as my communicator, as my advisor? Because we're communicators, but we also advise our commander. But we have to set them up for success saying, hey, this is what could potentially happen, but this is what I'm doing as a communicator to make sure that that doesn't happen. So hitting the key notes, commanders don't have a lot of time. So you don't want to overwhelm them with the details and talking about analytics and the one social media post. No, you want to say big picture, this is what we're doing. This is important to you, sir, ma'am, and this is how we're going to tackle that through communication. These are our key publics. This is how we're going to reach them. And at the end, this is what this is going to look like. So give them a time frame. Again, some commanders want a little more detail, so have that if they want that extra information, but just hit the bottom line up front and prepare them. Let them know if you were sitting in that seat, what would you want to know? What you would want to know, what's dangerous about this plan, and how are you protecting me? And what are we doing to protect the command and the mission?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's
Keep
great.
it rolling if you got stuff.
I think that we have another question.
Oh.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
There we go. We'll just keep.
There was a very specific
honestly.
question. Yeah, people are really interested in this.
I-
We have the question from Paul Cage. It says, my team and I are at the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory. How would you define the difference between a goal and an objective?
Okay, so your goal is the overarching goal, which is your the end state, where you want to end up, where you want to be. And then the objective, we use the acronym SMART objective. So that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And that just means the objectives is what's going to get you to your goal. So if you're saying you want to influence or whatever knowledge, attitude, behavior, now you're taking that SMART objective and you're saying, well, this is how I'm going to do that. I'm going to reach 50% of this key public by this date in order to achieve this. And that's the difference between the goal and objective. So for goal, you don't have to be very specific. Save that. So in terms of communication planning, your goal is at the beginning, and then you're writing your objectives and really narrowing it down to exactly how you're going to achieve that.
You just schooled us. You schooled us all.
I'm sure Lieutenant Georges is sending some great information in the chat right now.
All through I have this skim through all his good info to get to the question.
He's on it. Thank you, Lieutenant Georges.
It's
I
really
appreciate
great.
your support.
It's really great. From retired Senior Chief Sanford over at DINFOS, he says, what are some of the common missteps students make early on when choosing their issue or problem?
I think using the perceived problem. So my commander said this is a problem. Now, I don't recommend telling your commander, well, you're wrong, sir, ma'am. This is not a problem. But
Not a good career
not
move.
a good career move. But your research should show that, right? You're not going to go to your commander and say, hey, sir, ma'am, you're wrong. You're going to say, sir, ma'am, based on this research, I found that this is actually not a problem. But my research shows that this is actually a problem, so I want to address this. So you want to make sure that you're not just perceiving problems. Another issue is the tactics, jumping straight to the tactics, and we talked about that already, but really breaking yourself from that, because it's not about a social media post. You can't just slap on a tactic and be like, oh, check the block. It's just not going to work. If you really want to effectively communicate, you have to explain to me, what is that tactic supposed to do? What is the effect that you're trying to achieve, and how are you going to measure that? If you can't answer those questions, why are you wasting your time? Why are you spending all this time creating this 3-minute video that no one's going to watch. That takes a lot of manpower. That takes a lot of time. And sometimes commanders don't even know. People make requests and they don't understand how time consuming that is. They think we're experts and they think we could just, hey, 3-minute video, that'll take you what, an hour? But yeah, you see that face? You're like, no, that does not. It takes me hours and days. But how do they know if we don't communicate that?
Absolutely.
So just, that's why we say in order to avoid, because there are many more missteps, but I think that is the biggest one. And one more that I can think of is when you're providing your research, make sure that you tie it back to the issue at hand. If you're just listing facts, that doesn't do anything for the reader. It doesn't do anything for the communication plan. So if you're telling me X, Y, Z, okay, that's great information, but how are you using that to accomplish the goal? How are you shaping the information environment with this information?
We do that a lot in our evaluations. That's something that we need to think about all the time, not even just with comp planning. It should be a norm to us, right? What did you do? What was the effect? How did it change the command? How did it help anything? Like, okay, congratulations, you ate 100 hot dogs at the hot dog.
And you know, and I don't recommend changing it all the time. Give yourself maybe 30 days. If it is a social media campaign, give yourself time so you can make sure that you're not changing it so fast. Just because you have one tactic that maybe didn't go well, say, you know, let us give a little bit more time so we have a baseline. So we can say 30 days we tried this out and it did not work. But don't be afraid to try something new. Do it. And if it didn't work, great. You have something that you learned. And if it worked, even better. Now you continue doing what works.
For sure, for sure. I like that. I like that.
So PAX-Q, not getting off subject, but a little bit about the course. How long is the course?
The course is 9 weeks.
Okay, and the comm planning is a piece of it, or it is the whole thing?
Yeah, so actually the communication plan is a critical competency, meaning that the students have to achieve a 70% or higher in order to continue in the course. So the reason for that is it is foundational to everything that we do. If you cannot write an effective communication plan, that's a pretty good indicator that it might be difficult for you to do anything else as a communicator. So that's why we put so much weight into it. And we really allow, I know myself, Lieutenant Georges, and the other comm planners on the staff, we really take time to pour into the students to give them chances where we have them turn in a proposal where it's just the research. So we want to make sure their research is set up, because if that's good, that's their foundation. Then they're able to build off of that. But we want to stop them in their tracks, because if they're not, we want to redirect them. And then we allow them to turn in a draft and then kind of redirect a little bit. Hey, just ask those questions, not giving them answers, but just asking questions to get them to think a little bit differently. Because some students are brand new to the field and others have 20 plus years. So we want to make sure that we're meeting them where they're at and helping them with the areas that they need help with.
Okay. Are there follow-on courses that someone could come back to? Not necessarily at the schoolhouse, but are there other courses? Not Georgetown. That'd be a good one to go to. But are there other courses? Yeah. But are there other courses that a student, say they love this and they want more information about it? Are there courses they could go to?
There are. There's the JICPAC, the Joint Contingency Public Affairs course, and then you have JIPAC, which is the Joint Intermediate Public Affairs course. And I think there's information on the Defense Information School website on when those courses are.
Yeah, absolutely, the course catalog. All right, perfect. So I think we're going to go back. We'll take one more online, and then we're going to wrap up. We didn't try to limit this to a short, we went over 30 minutes, which is kind of our goal. But if it's good information and you're comfortable answering the questions, we're going to keep going. So we'll do one more online, and I think we'll wrap it up.
All right.
I've been scrolling, and again, there's a lot of information on there. So if everybody's watching, if you haven't gotten a chance to go in the comments, Lieutenant Georges is really burning it up with good information for you
awesome.
all. So with that being said, it's kind of hard to scroll through all of that to find other questions, but I think I have one question. Okay. There was the question about the discussion forums. Do you have any specific places that you go to find information on comm planning, like discussion forums or online communities where you search or where you all go to get some new information and updated information?
Well, I recommended to my students the other day actually going to Reddit and seeing what both sides see. So whatever the issue is, making sure that you're going to that community, not just of maybe like-minded people, but on both sides, because you want to get that well-rounded opinion, right? You want to hear from both sides. You don't want to be biased and then ignore one side over the other. I think Facebook groups, honestly, are really, every time I'm going to a new installation, I'm always looking at, let me join the wives page and just listen to what is concerning them, because they're a huge key public. We want to engage with the family members. And if we don't know, if we don't understand what's happening with them, how can we speak to them? So I think Reddit is one, Facebook groups, just having conversations with the staff, with people at different events concerning your organization. We also have groups with other communicators. And sometimes we'll say, hey, we have this issue. Does anyone have resources on this? Because guess what? It's probably been done before, right? So we love to say work harder, work smarter, not harder. So you want to go on, and we have these communities. So I would find, depending what service you're on, I'm sure that there's some community that you can plug into where they already have a lot of resources that they would love to share with you. And people are always out there. Find yourself a mentor and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or I have no idea where to start. Can you please help me? And I'm sure that they'll be able to point you in the right direction. But you're never alone. Go reach out to people, talk to the staff, talk to your higher headquarters, your PAO there, and I'm sure that you'll be able to find some assistance.
Great. I'm big on mentorship.
Yeah, it's
somebody's
important.
done it before you, so no need
learn
to
from their
reinvent.
mistakes. We don't have to repeat mistakes,
Absolutely.
right? We can learn from other people's mistakes.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Big deal. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. You're welcome.
So much good information today. I really do appreciate your time. We can't cover everything, obviously, and we want to answer all the questions. The conversation will continue online, so if you have questions, please continue to ask them. We'll post a link afterwards on YouTube, so we'll have a whole nother audience then. So if you have those questions, please get them in, and you guys will continue that. But what are some resources as we wrap up here? What are some resources where people could go and find more information about communication planning?
I think definitely the DINFOS Pavilion page, that has a lot of rich resources, especially it's just a one-stop shop for communicators, I think. And then there's also, once you go in there, they have a lot of joint publications that will help, because we are a military school. So we want to make sure that we're integrating with the staff in the joint planning process. And RPI and JPP actually mirror nicely together. They're not separate, right? It's the same thing, just a different language.
JPP?
JPP, a joint planning process.
There you go.
Oh, you're going to say, yeah, I always say JPP, yeah, you know me. That just always happens. So
I'm down with it.
And I think you'll have a whole list of resources. Also, go to your service website, the public affairs site for your specific command, and they should have a public affairs location with all of the publications and regulations that you need specific to your service, because we don't always go straight to a joint environment, but we teach that here so that they're set up for success.
Perfect. That's very helpful. All right. Well, ma'am, thank you very much for coming in today. It was wonderful information. We'll do this again next month. Once again, we've got a few subjects that we're talking about bringing on. One of them is storytelling. Pavilion will be another one. We'll go into an in-depth talk about Pavilion. And then also the MCF courses. We're going to talk a little bit more about those. We'll bring in subject matter experts for that. So thank you for the conversation today. Tell all your friends, your family, your loved ones, all your coworkers. Hit us up on LinkedIn, whatever, and keep those questions coming. We enjoyed having you out there and having you in the studio. Daisy Purefoy, I think that's our episode for today. Thanks so much. Everybody like those shoes.